Can you imagine going through an old family photograph and finding someone you've never seen before? Imagine the chill that runs down your spine as you try to recall a face that is unfamiliar, and the horror that grips you when you realize that with each glance at that image, the extra figure is moving closer to the center. It's an experience that could lead any family to question their own history, but for the Johnsons, this was just the beginning of something terrifying. For years, the Johnsons had kept an old photograph from their family reunion, an image that had been taken during the warm summer of 1985, a time that everyone remembered as a peak of happiness and unity. But upon closer inspection, the unsettling detail of a shadowy figure at the far right began to transform into something more than just a mere shadow. With each passing day, the figure crept closer to the center of the photograph, as if it were on an inevitable path toward them. The first time I noticed the figure, it was like a whisper in the dark. It was during dinner when my mother, with her contagious laughter, brought out the old photo box from Grandma's attic. We all leaned over the table, exploring the memories captured in those images, until I stumbled upon that particular photograph. I felt drawn to the strange figure, a blurry silhouette whose presence seemed to defy the logic of our memories. It was a dark-haired man, with a gaze that seemed to penetrate the paper, and a cold shiver ran down my spine when I realized that no one in the family recognized him. My uncle started making jokes, suggesting that he might have been a friend from that day, but laughter quickly faded when my sister pointed out that the figure had shifted a bit in position. At first, I thought it could be an optical illusion, but upon revisiting it days later, horror gripped my heart. It was closer to the center. From that fateful night, the unsettling emotion became a shadow that haunted us, making every glance at the photograph feel like an invitation to a darker realm. The house filled with murmurs. Our conversations became strange, filled with shared fears and furtive glances. But the true terror arrived the next day when my sister decided to tell her best friend about the strange guest in the photograph. At first, her friend laughed, but when our sister showed her the image, her face turned pale. She began murmuring something about an urban legend we had never heard of. That legend spoke of an ancient curse, whereby if someone appeared in a family photograph unrecognized, that person was destined to enter their lives. The dimensional horror of that idea filled us with panic, yet I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something indescribable about the figure that awakened an odd curiosity within us. Weeks went by, and the figure continued to draw closer in the image. Every time we looked at it, its presence became more prominent and its gaze more penetrating. The atmosphere in the house shifted, and small things began happening. One night, while we all slept, my mother heard a whisper in the kitchen. "No, don't go," was what a voice she had never heard seemed to say. When she told me about it in the morning, a sense of horror gripped me. The lights flickered for no reason, and the mirrors in the house seemed to reflect more than just our shadows. We decided to seek help from an old man in the neighborhood, known for his knowledge of the supernatural. His face grew grave as he examined the photograph, his hands trembling as he traced the edges of the image with his fingers. "This figure is calling one of you. It has no good intentions," he warned us in a trembling voice. That day, the tension in the house became unbearable. Happy memories began to fade. Laughter turned into whispers, and each of us started to doubt the sanity of the others. We began to notice that days turned darker, the atmosphere felt heavy, and the echoes of laughter that once filled our home were replaced by a sepulchral silence. In the end, we made the decision to get rid of the photograph. With trembling hands, we tossed the image into the fire, watching as the flames devoured every corner of the picture that had tormented our lives. But deep down, in the depths of our consciousness, we knew that something had been unleashed, that the figure might not have truly departed. That night, when the house finally seemed free of its presence, sleep brought another nightmare. In it, the figure approached me. Its eyes were dark as night, and I could only hear its voice whispering my name. Upon waking, I felt a weight on my chest, and my sister was looking at me with fear. "I saw it in the mirror," she said in a trembling tone. A chill ran down my spine as I recalled the old man's warnings. We decided to investigate further about the figure. Our search for answers led us to an old diary belonging to our grandmother. Its pages were filled with accounts of strange events and visions. One chapter, in particular, spoke of a distant relative who had mysteriously disappeared years ago. The diary described him as someone who had always been on the fringes, and as I read, a vague image began to form in my mind. The very same figure from the photograph. The shiver ran down my back. I had been seeking answers, but the truth could be more terrifying than the shadow in the image. It was as if that unknown presence was returning to claim its place, and what had begun as a simple family mystery had transformed into a nightmare from which we could not awaken. With each passing day, the figure became more tangible in our lives. We began to hear strange noises at night, whispers that seemed to call each of us separately. No matter how many times we tried to ignore it, its presence grew stronger, slowly wearing us down. A flood of questions filled our minds. Who was he? What did he want? And what if he couldn't leave? In the end, everything culminated on an ominous night when we decided to confront our fears. Huddled together in the living room, we formed a circle, each holding a candle that illuminated our pale faces. Taking a deep breath, we began to speak to the figure, to summon it. "If you are part of our family, show us who you are," I said, my voice trembling but filled with determination. In that instant, the temperature in the room dropped dramatically. The candle flames began to dance as if stirred by an unseen breeze. And then, in the darkness, a shadow emerged, taking form and approaching us. Its eyes were two dark voids, and its smile was more terrifying than anything we could have imagined. In that moment, we understood that we had made a grave mistake by summoning it. We were just a group of intruders in the life of someone who had been forgotten, an echo of what once was, and terror gripped us as the figure moved through us, taking with it the essence of our family. The photograph, although destroyed, was etched in our memories, and the lesson learned was that some mysteries are not meant to be solved. So if you ever look at a photo and see something strange, remember this. Sometimes the unknown should remain hidden. If you enjoyed this story, please give it a like, subscribe, and leave me a comment sharing your thoughts on this tale. Your support is essential for continuing to bring more horror stories. Until next time,